You've noticed something strange about yourself. You can't stop telling stories. Even when you're alone, you're narrating your own life. A quiet moment becomes a memory shaped into a narrative. A problem becomes a plot you're trying to solve. You catch yourself doing it constantly, turning raw experience into story. And you wonder, why can't your brain just experience things directly? Why does it need to turn everything into a narrative arc? The answer is that you're not broken, you're ancient. And every human who has ever lived has done exactly what you're doing right now. Every culture that has ever existed tells stories. Not all of them write them down. Not all of them record them on screens. But every single human society, from small hunter-gatherer bands to massive agricultural civilizations to modern cities of millions, has spent enormous energy on narrative. We gather around fires to hear stories. We carve them into stone. We pass them down across generations. We argue about them. We die for the stories we believe in. We kill for them. We transform our entire societies based on the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and where we're going. This isn't a choice we made. This is something deeper. Your brain evolved to think in stories because stories were a survival technology. Think about what a story actually does. A story is a simulation. When you listen to a story about your ancestor hunting a predator, your brain isn't just filing away information, it's running a model. It's showing you what happened, why it mattered, what the danger was, and how to survive it next time. Before you ever face that predator yourself, your brain has already lived through that scenario. You've borrowed someone else's experience. Neuroscientist Udi Hassan at Princeton has shown that when you listen to a story, your brain synchronizes with the storyteller's brain. Your neural patterns literally match theirs. You're not just hearing words, you're experiencing a kind of neural merger. Your brain is running their simulation. And through that, you're learning without having to take every risk yourself. You're accessing millions of hours of ancestral knowledge compressed into the time it takes to listen. This is why every culture tells stories. Survival information has to move between generations. A young human who has never seen a drought, a flood, a betrayal, or a triumph needs to understand how to respond when they happen. Stories are how that knowledge gets encoded and transmitted. But here's what makes this even more remarkable. Stories don't just move information. They move values. They move meaning. They move a sense of identity. A culture's stories define what that culture believes is good, beautiful, dangerous, sacred, and possible. The stories we tell our children literally shape how they will see the world and themselves in it. When you grow up hearing stories that say, your people are clever tricksters who survive by outsmarting, you internalize that identity. When you grow up hearing stories that say, honor is more important than your own life, you internalize that value. When you grow up hearing stories where women are the keepers of wisdom, or stories where men are the hunters, or stories where anyone can become anything, you internalize those possibilities. Historian Yuval Noah Harari has spent decades studying how stories hold societies together. He points out that nations, religions, companies, and entire civilizations are held together not by physical reality, but by shared stories. A nation doesn't actually exist. It's a story everyone agrees to believe. A company's brand isn't a thing, it's a narrative that millions of people are willing to invest in. Money itself is a shared story. We agree that a piece of paper or a digital number has value, and that agreement, that story, is powerful enough to organize the entire global economy. Without stories, there would be no society at all. We would be isolated individuals with no way to coordinate, no shared meaning, no reason to trust each other. This is why humans have always invested so much effort into being good storytellers and good listeners. If you were bad at understanding stories in our ancestral environment, you didn't learn the tribe's crucial survival lessons. You didn't understand your place in the social hierarchy. You didn't know which alliances were safe and which were dangerous. You didn't absorb the values that would make the group tolerate you. Bad listeners and bad story understanders probably didn't survive to pass on their genes. Good storytellers, on the other hand, held power. A person who could take a confusing, frightening experience and shape it into a narrative that made sense, that gave the tribe hope or meaning or understanding, was invaluable. They didn't have to be the strongest hunter or the best fighter. They could be the person who held the group together with words. This is why we're obsessed with stories today. We evolved to be obsessed with them. And yet, we tell ourselves a story about storytelling that isn't quite true. We imagine that the ancients told stories for entertainment, and modern humans tell stories for entertainment too, but that we're not really shaped by them anymore. We think stories are frivolous, something we consume in our spare time, separate from real knowledge and real decision-making. But that's not how your brain works. Psychologist and storytelling researcher Jerome Bruner found that when people are given information presented as an argument, pure facts, pure logic, they remember about 10% of it. But when that same information is woven into a story, they remember up to 65% of it. A story doesn't just communicate information more efficiently, it changes what your brain is capable of remembering and believing. This is why advertising works through stories, not logic. This is why a single story about someone struggling with a disease can change public opinion more than 1,000 statistics. This is why religions have survived for thousands of years, not through argument, but through narrative. This is why you, right now, are more shaped by the stories you've absorbed from your family, your culture, your media, your friends, than by any amount of pure logic or data. Your ancestors knew this. They didn't call it neuroscience, but they understood that stories were the most powerful technology they had. Different cultures develop different kinds of stories for different purposes. Some cultures emphasize myth, stories about gods and cosmology that explain the origin of the world and humanity's place in it. Some emphasized epic, grand narratives of heroic journeys and trials that encoded values of courage, loyalty, and endurance. Some emphasized folktale and parable, short, repeatable stories that taught moral lessons and social norms. Some emphasized ancestor narratives, stories about the specific people who came before you, which created a genealogy of meaning and responsibility. But across all these variations, the function was the same. Stories organized meaning, preserved knowledge, and held communities together. And here's something else that's true about every culture's stories. They tell you who you are. Your origin stories tell you where you came from. Your hero stories tell you what excellence looks like. Your cautionary tales tell you what to avoid. Your creation myths tell you why the world is the way it is. Your religious narratives tell you what's sacred, what's forbidden, and what's possible after death. Your cultural legends tell you what your people are famous for, what they've survived, what they're capable of. When you grow up steeped in these stories, you don't just learn facts, you internalize an identity. You learn the shape of your own life, how it should go, what you should aspire to, what kind of person you're supposed to become. This is so powerful that many anthropologists believe cultures can be defined almost entirely by their narratives. Show me your culture's most important stories, and I can predict what you value, how you organize yourselves, what you're willing to die for, and what you're willing to kill for. And here's the gentle part of this. You don't have to accept the stories you were given. Your brain evolved to be shaped by stories, yes, but it also evolved to be able to question them, to revise them, and to tell new ones. Every person who has ever challenged the dominant narrative of their culture, who said, "I don't believe that story anymore," or "I'm going to tell a different story about what's possible," was using the same storytelling technology that holds societies together, but directing it toward change instead of stability. When a new story becomes compelling enough, people start to believe it. When enough people believe it, culture shifts. Slavery was once described in stories as natural and righteous. Those stories were challenged and replaced with different narratives about human dignity and equality. Gender roles were once encoded in stories as fixed and eternal.
Those stories have been rewritten, and they're still being rewritten. What counts as progress, what counts as success, what counts as a good life, all of these are stories that shift across time and culture. But the underlying fact remains. You are a story-receiving, story-making creature. Your brain can't help it. It's not a flaw. It's the reason you have culture, meaning, memory, and hope. The next time you catch yourself narrating your own life, or getting lost in a story, or changing your mind because of something you heard, you'll know what's happening. You're using a technology that your species has been perfecting for hundreds of thousands of years. You're downloading someone else's experience. You're absorbing values. You're being shaped by narrative, the same way your ancestors were shaped and their ancestors before them. And if you're someone who feels that pull, that need to tell stories, to share experiences, to find the narrative underneath the raw moments of life, that pull is old. It's not modern. It's not accidental. It's written into you. If this kind of deep exploration into why we are the way we are is landing for you, following along genuinely helps this little channel keep going. No pressure at all, just a quiet ask. Because the truth is, understanding your own mind, understanding where your drives and fears and needs come from, understanding that you're not broken when you feel things that made sense in a different world, that's what it means to understand yourself as a creature of history and evolution. So the next time you're drawn to a story, whether it's an ancient myth or a modern film, a family legend or a personal memory you keep reshaping, notice what's happening. You're participating in the oldest and most powerful technology humans have ever created. You're not just listening, you're being wired. You're becoming part of a story that is thousands of years old. And that story, the one that said you need community, you need meaning, you need to understand yourself through narrative, that story was right all along. If this shifted something for you, there's another one waiting. It picks up right where this leaves off. Take care.